on in Bojo Kanawea, Mr. McLeod Mondiamina, Bajinaka Queen Ween Monim. I just want to let you guys know that links to the dictionary, PDFs to the worksheet, audio files are in links in the description of this video, as well as any other resources that'll help you out with this lesson will eventually be there as soon as I'm done making them. Ahau, miigwech.
On in Bojo, Mr. McLeod, Mondaya. And so today's lesson, we'll be learning about VAI C-form phrases. So learning how to ask who or what questions and turning verbs into nouns. So think of this as almost like a changing of the leaves. Sometimes we have green leaves, other times we have orange or red leaves. And so that's what our language is doing. So a recap on verb forms. So A form are our independent clauses. These are plain sentences that make sense on their own without further information. For example, the dog is sleeping. Nimushinba. B form or dependent clauses are phrases that sound incomplete on their own without further information. For example, Ich bin nimushinbad if the dog is sleeping. C form is our last form that I know of at least. We will cover, and it has a few functions. So C form functions. So C form has a few functions that I can educate you on. In English, we attach the suffix er to our verb to change a verb to a noun. So for example, we have clean, cleaner, and this means someone who cleans. So an example of that in Ojibwe is Beanchige, she or he is cleaning. Bonchiged, cleaner, the one who cleans. And so in English, we took the verb for clean, added er to it to change it from a verb to a noun. And so we're doing that in Ojibwe. We're turning Beanchige into Bonchiged. So one of C form's functions is to turn verbs into nouns. Just like we did up here. We turned Beanchige from a verb to a noun. Bonchiged. So Nimushinba, the dog is sleeping. This is A form. Gishbin Nimushinbad, if the dog is sleeping. Nimush enbad or Nimush nebad, the dog that is sleeping. And so we went from noun and verb to the one who is sleeping here. So enbad or nebad, the one that's sleeping. In this case, a dog. So here I've indicated the point for you to write down for your notes. Please write this down before moving on. All right, let's move on. All right, so we have the image here to write down everything from this slide in your notes. Right here, that bad boy. So C form is used for grammar patterns like what. So grammar pattern for what is wagnan or onde plus C form. So we got wagnan emnikweyan, what are you drinking? And wagnan menikweyan, both mean what are you drinking? It's just we have a slight difference in initial change here. We have a few options. So pause the video here before moving on and write these down in your notes. All right, let's move on. All right, so continue to write all this stuff from this slide in your notes as well. So Gishpin patterns for who also use C form. So grammar pattern who is wanen plus or onde plus C form. So we got wanen enbod, who is sleeping, or wanen nebod, who is sleeping. Same words, just different initial change features. So again, I'll give you a chance to pause here before writing this down in your notes before moving on. All right, let's move on. All right, so C form is also used for grammar patterns like a realized after. So realized after is something that did happen. So for example, Ga bang ziyan, after I was dry. So this was taken from an excerpt taken from I'm Not a Number, translated by our speakers in Nipissing. And they translated Ga bang ziyan as after I was dry. Another example, Chiketing ga ba pit, after he laughed real hard, from our Nipissing little language book called Ektawad Gekajik. So here I've indicated the points for you to write down for your notes. Please write these down before moving on. Alright, let's move on. Alright, so C form features. So C form has some key features that differentiate it from A form and B form. So C form uses initial change on its verbs and or prefixes. C form uses most of the same suffixes as B form. C form negative uses the same suffixes as B form negative. C form uses a different suffix than B form negative for their noun transitions if the noun is third person plural. So here I've indicated the points for you to write down in your notes. Please write these down before moving on. Alright, let's move on. So initial change. So I like to think of initial change like the changing of the seasons. Leaves go from green to orange, red, or brown. And in the summer, trees are back to having green leaves. Hence why the text has been colored with this theme so far. So green will represent our unchanged versions of our words, and orange highlights the change in vowel sounds that Ojibwe uses, called initial change. Initial change. So initial change is where we change the first vowel sound of a verb or its prefix, if present, to a different sound. So for example, we sne, she or he is eating. We snid, if or that she is eating. Wa snid, the one that eats. And so we go from A form to B form here. A form, we sne. B form, we're adding the D suffix, we snid. And then we got to change the first vowel sound in the verb, which is that double I, to make it C form. Wasnid, the one that eats. So changing the vowel sound can sound like a drastic change, but we do similar things in English with greater variance and no apparent patterns. So at least with Ojibwe, it's just the first vowel sound of the prefix or the verb that consistently changes. So, for example, in English, there's throw versus through. And so the first vowel sound changes there. Nothing to cry about. No versus new. Again, first vowel's changing. Nothing else. Run versus ran. Same thing. Initial change in English. Have versus had. Now in English, we're changing our consonant sounds. We went from changing the first vowel sounds to the consonants. And it was at the end, not the beginning. So have versus had. They're related, but sound different. Begin, begun, began. Now we have 3 variations for related to the same concept or word. And we're changing the last vowel sound as opposed to the first. Read versus read. Again, changing the first vowel sound, but it's spelt the same. Mouse versus mice. So for this example, we not only changed the first vowel sound, but the last consonant sound as well. And that E is silent for some reason. And then hoof versus hooves. So for this one, the F changed to a V sound and we added ES. So now in English, with their initial change, they're changing consonant sounds and adding sounds. And lastly, this one's my personal favorite. Think versus thought. Both these words are related, but the only common sound they have is the TH at the beginning. think, the action, versus thought, the noun. And so English has a greater variance in initial change than Ojibwe does. In Ojibwe, we're just changing that first vowel sound in the verb or the prefix if present. So if you can speak in English, you can do initial change in Ojibwe, no problem. So here I've indicated the point for you to write down in your notes. Please write this down before moving on. All right, let's move on. All right, so initial change has two styles. Old style that some dialects still practice to this day, and a modern Eastern style, what most native Nipissing speakers practice. And so we'll have both variations on the screen here. So in the old style, where they don't de-stress their vowel sounds, they change an A sound to an E sound. So A to E. So we have anoki, and so we're going to change that A to an E sound. Enokid, and we added the B form suffix. Same thing here in Nipissing, but since our A is de-stressed, when we do initial change, we bring it back and change it. So becomes e. So nuki versus enkid. And so because the O is short, we get rid of it with syncopation. So in the old style, double A, would become aya. So akoze would become ayakozid. Akoze, ayakozid. So for Nipissing, instead of changing our ah sound, we're going to add the prefix of a hanging E. So oxe to eoxid. Oxe, he or she is sick. Eoxid, the one who is sick. Old style, an E sound would be changed to aye. So debwe, he or she speaks the truth. Dayebwed, the one who speaks the truth. And so we can see here, the E is unchanged, and then the orange is changed. So E becomes aye. And so in Nipissing here, instead of changing the E sound, we're keeping it and adding an E prefix. So debwe becomes edebwed. In the old style, single I becomes e. So they have ikidu, and then it changes to ekidud for C form. So we're just changing the I to an E sound. In Nipissing, we don't normally have the I sound in A form, but when we do in C form, we bring it back and change it. So it becomes e. So we got kidu, has an I sound in front, and then in C form, ekdud, sorry. Double I, E, becomes an ah sound. So nime, she or he is dancing. Namid, dancer. And so we have a couple varieties in Nipissing Nishnaabemwin for this one. So double I can turn to a double A, or you can use your E prefix again. So nime could either become namid or enimid. Single O becomes a W sound. So in old style, they have odamino for he or she's playing. Wedaminud, the one who's playing. And we have a few options here for Nipissing Nishnaabemwin. O can either become we, or you can use the E prefix. So again, because O is normally de-stressed, we skip it and go dumno. And then for the C form, we can either say wedumnud or edumnud. And the last one, our long O sound becomes a wa sound. So for example here, bodwe, she who builds fire. Boisdwed, the one who builds the fire. And for Nipissing Nishnaabemwin, we don't get rid of the O sound or change it. We just add an E prefix if there's no tense marker present. So bodwe becomes ebodwed. And you can see here we still keep that O sound. We just add the E sound. I've indicated that you should probably write these down in your notes. Please write this down before moving on. And then for your notes and for your assignment, you should probably write this down as well before moving on. All right, let's move on. So rules about initial change for Nipissing dialect. So initial change affects the first vowel sound in either the verb prefix, like a tense marker, or the verb if no prefix is present. Sometimes speakers elect to initial change dropped vowel sounds. So they bring back the drop vowel sound, change it based on our initial change rules from the previous slide, and then resyncopate the verbs as necessary. So they adjust the order of stressed and de-stressed vowel sounds. So we'll have our full versions of our words here. This is why it's important to learn your full non-syncopated versions of our words here. So we'll have it over here. Then we'll have the B form so that you guys have the suffix. And then we'll practice the C form here, so the initial change. So wisne. So the full version is wisne. And so we got wisnid for that D prefix for third person. So our double I is the sound we're changing. And so from our last slide, double I's changed to a double A. Wasnid, or you can use your hanging E prefix, ewisnid, and keep the vowel sound from before. Next, we have bewisne. So we have a prefix here, be. Normally an I is de-stressed at the end there. So bewisne yan. So now we're talking about you coming to eat. And so again, we have that I sound that's underlined. So this is the intended sound we're going to change here because it's the prefix. And our single I is changed to an E sound. So bewisne yan. So now we have giwisne, our past tense marker added. So giwisne yan, talking about ourselves in the past eating. And so we've also indicated here that our prefix here has a double I sound that's got to be changed for C form. It's the first vowel sound. So double I is changed to an A sound. Gawisne yan. Next here we have unjewisne, or njewisne as we say in Nipissing. We de-stress that O sound, the I sound, so it sounds like njewisne. And so we have njewisnid. Now you're wondering, where is the underlying sound we change? It's been de-stressed, so it's over here. So we take that O sound and change it based on our rules from the last slide. Wenjewisnid. So O becomes a WE sound or an E sound. Next we have gi njewisne. So what do we do if there's multiple prefixes? So again, changing the first prefix in our verb phrase. So when it's desyncopated or syncopated, we have gi njewisne yan. So we're changing that double I sound again to a double A. So ganjewisne yan. Lastly here, our verb for drinking, she or he is drinking, nikwe. We have a secret I sound in between the M and the end. And it's underlined, so that's the intended vowel sound we're changing. So normally in Nipissing, we'd hear this nikwe, nikwe yan. So talking about ourselves drinking. So we change an I sound to an E sound. So menkwe yan. So that's our C form version. So we mentioned hanging E a few times here, so we're going to cover that now. So the hanging E is a prefix modern speakers use to replace old-style initial change for vowel sounds double A, E, single O, and double O. It is also acceptable to use the hanging E prefix in place of the rest of the vowel sounds. So when you can't find a vowel sound between a cluster of consonants in a word, feel free to use the hanging E prefix. Like in an example like mnikwe. If you didn't know what the vowel sound was, you can use a hanging E, mnikwe, and then whatever your B form suffix. So when all else fails, you can use a hanging E unless there's a tense marker present. So here I've indicated the points for you to write down in your notes. Pause the video here before moving on. Alright, let's move on. So let's practice some C form. So again, we'll have our full vowel forms over here, B form examples there, and then do initial change to our vowel sounds for C form. So ginwema means she or he is lying, like deceitful. So we have ginwemud. So we added our B form suffix, D. So we're changing this double I sound. And so we change double I sounds to a double A. Gonwemud, or you can use hanging E, eginwemud. Next we have wabe. And so now we're using a negative B form suffix, swan. And so our double A is our sound that we want to change. And according to our slide, we use a hanging E for this one. So ewab swan, as indicated here. Next, we have sindum. It has a secret I sound in the middle there, or in the front. So bisindum. So we're doing this in third person. So we change the M ending to an N and added a G for third person for our M enders. And so we're going to change that I to an E sound for besindung for the third person. Or again, hanging E example, ebisindung. Next, we have we and ba, she or he wants to sleep. And so for our B form, we and ba sig. We used our B form negative suffix for third person, sig. And so we want to change that double I of our tense marker to wan ba sig. So we don't have a hanging E example for this one because you can't attach a hanging E to a prefix, just the verbs. So you notice the verb examples here, they have hanging E's, but this tense marker doesn't have hanging E. So we have chizostum, for he or she's coughing a lot. And so B form, chizostumun. So we're talking about the U. That's our second person singular suffix for B form. So remember, we have that secret I sound there. So that's what we're going to change for our C form. Getchizostumun or eggchizostumun. Now we can use a hang E because gche is not a tense marker. And last one, jinkazo is the way we normally say this, but the full version is ijenekazo. So it's got an I sound in front. That's the sound we're going to change. So jinkazyan. So jin, and we got rid of that last I, cause, and then the O for our syncopation rules, and added yun for you. So we're going to change that first I sound to an E sound, as indicated here. So ejnekazyan is how we put that into C form. So a recap. So C form is how we convert verbs into nouns, say after, and use grammar patterns like who and what. There's probably other functions that Mr. McLeod missed or doesn't know. For C form, we use initial change rules established in the earlier in the lesson. Most C form inflections use the same suffix as B form. Mi saya aja. That's it for now. Chimigwech.